Get a grip. That was the tagline emblazoned on Sega's 1995 ad for Ristar, which touted the character as, quote, the galaxy's newest superstar.
Watch out, Sonic.
So how is it that this little celestial body still resides under the deepest of darkness, sequelless, over 30 years later? Welcome back to Review, the series where we dust off the cartridges and compact discs of old to find out if they're still diamonds or if they're better off left wallowing in that 8-month-old eBay listing. Ah yes, Ristar, a platformer bursting with charm, creativity, craftsmanship. To talk about this cosmic conundrum, we gotta travel all the way back in time to 1995. The 16-bit era was ready to take its final bow, but not without a fight. The SNES went down swinging, dropping masterpieces like Chrono Trigger and Yoshi's Island deep into the 12th round, while Sega countered with its own late gems. Games like Comic Zone, Vector Man 2, and Earthworm Jim 2, they were big, bold, and beautiful, but seemingly 2D too late. The Saturn launched in May stateside, with the PlayStation exiting the gates powerfully in September. 3D polygonal games were the new hotness, and sprite-based games were getting squeezed out at the margin. CD-ROMs were the future.
Well,
mostly, unless you ask Nintendo, because hella hype was building around the Ultra 64, which, in their classic way of doing things, bucked all trends and decided that cartridges were still in. That didn't last too long though, did it, eh? And then you had little 9-year-old Zishin, who was living large with that glorious Sega Channel subscription, which felt like literal science fiction at the time. New games, weird imports, Nightmare Circus, shit, count me in for that. Even today. So while everyone else was pivoting towards the next generation, looking to the skies for hope, Sega ever so quietly released Ristar. No big commercials, no hype, just a bright little star tossed into a black hole of next-gen buzz. Too little,
too late.
But bruh, when I first played Ristar, I knew it was something special. The art design, animations, music, and gameplay all felt so different, so unique. I appreciated the more measured and cerebral pace compared to its manic mascot muchacho. I loved the fantastic tunes that utilized some very clever voice samples, especially in one of the more infamous stages. I can't tell you how grateful I am that the Sega Channel provided this experience. So, of course, when it popped up on things like the Sega Mega Collection, and even later on Sega Genesis Classics, y'all, I was stoked. I seriously play Ristar about once a year, even still. It's just such an innovative, unique, and utterly charming piece of Genesis history. What a fascinating and weird legacy it has left. Why wasn't Ristar so much bigger? Now, this may or may not be surprising, but Ristar started life as a scrapped Sonic concept. Initially, a rabbit that could grab enemies with its ears. I have a feeling that idea sort of lived on in a couple enemies you encounter that use, well, their ears. However, the concept ultimately evolved into Ristar, thanks to a team at Sonic Team Japan, including Yuji Uekawa, who later redesigned Sonic for the Dreamcast, and first-time composer Tomoko Sasaki. This team consisted of many industry vets and was led by Akira Nishino of Sonic CD fame, infamy, fame? I guess it sort of depends on who you ask, right? Internally codenamed Feel, the game's core idea was about interaction and rhythm, not speed. This was part of a broader push at Sega of Japan to innovate on player interaction rather than reflex-only based gameplay. This move anticipated the experimental vibe later seen in titles like Nights into Dreams and Choo Choo Rocket. Many of these folks would actually go on to work on Nights into Dreams, including the wonderful music from Tomoko. But yeah, Ristar was positioned as a potential mascot game. However, as Sega's focus shifted to the Saturn, this classic did not receive a hero's welcome. Ristar launched with almost zero fanfare. In a 2006 interview, director Akira Nishino shared that a sequel had been designed, but never quite greenlit. It got as far as character design, but it didn't happen for various reasons. Sega hoped this game could usurp Sonic at some point, but like so many unforced errors the console maker would have in the next few years, you couldn't tell it by how they rolled this John out. It wasn't backed by any major campaign or pack-in deal. Despite its near last-minute release for the Genesis, it never even got a Saturn port.
Contradictory as hell.
All that talent and skill, seemingly wasted, which is a shame. Ristar is an amazing game for those who played it, and critics largely agreed with some caveats. Sega Magazine of the United Kingdom gave it an 87%, calling it a very playable and superbly presented platform game with great gameplay and audio, albeit noting that it borrowed elements from other platformers such as Sonic, Dynamite Headdy, and Earthworm Jim. GamePro's review said that Ristar feels, quote, sluggish in comparison to Sonic, and that the low difficulty would suit younger or beginner gamers. However, they did still recommend it based on its, quote, colorful visuals and cleverly designed gameplay. And then we got EGM's review, which is so damn small it didn't get more than a paragraph write-up. But they ended up giving it a 7.6 average and called Ristar, quote, an excellent new character. No awards, very little hoopla. Generally, the reviews were solid, but not even reviewers seemed all that blown away at the time. Despite that, the game sold modestly. Decent. But its reputation continues to grow with time. Fueled by retro compilations, clever homages from Sega over the years, YouTube retrospectives like this one, and that ever-burning love from fans who finally got hit. Today, Ristar is often cited as a prime example of an underrated game of the era. If you've played it, I know you feel this. Polished gameplay, endearing characters, and lots of heart. The game's journey from an overlooked release to a cult favorite underscores how quality can eventually earn recognition, even if belated. Like many 90s platformers, Ristar doesn't burden a player with lengthy story sequences, but it has a quaint little space fantasy premise conveyed through brief scenes. The setup is simple. The Valdi star system is in peril. An evil space tyrant named Kaiser Greedy, what a name, has used mind control to corrupt the rulers of each planet. Ristar is the galaxy's final hope, a sentient shooting star with a pretty damn violent headbutt and arms like linguine. In the Japanese version, Ristar is awakened by the goddess Oruto. In the Western release, he's recast as the son of a captured cosmic hero called by the planet Flora. I guess we weren't cool with deities over here, huh? I'm gonna go ahead and blame Christianity for this one. But, in all honesty, the Western changes were probably made to give Ristar more of a personal motivation for whooping that ass. But, let me dunk on the role religion played right after Easter, all right? Of interesting note are the different endings. In the Japanese version, Greedy is simply stranded on a distant asteroid, staring at a constellation of Ristar, shaking his fist. While over here in the West, we see Ristar happily reunited with his freed father. So yeah, while Ristar's story is not deeply developed, it does provide a fun framework for the adventure. Essentially, it's a hero's quest across the solar system to overthrow an evil conqueror and save the leaders of various planets. Like most games of the era, you're really here for one thing, the gameplay. So let's go ahead and talk about it, because this is where Ristar really shines. Now, how many star-related jokes can one script possibly hold? Stay tuned. The dope thing about Ristar is that it isn't about speed like Sonic. He's methodical and precise. His primary mechanic is grabbing, not spinning, running, or dashing. He can stretch his arms in all 8 directions to latch on enemies, poles, walls, basically anything, and pull himself into a signature headbutt that's both hilarious and surprisingly satisfying to pull off. This really isn't your average hop and bop platformer for real. The levels are primarily built around a puzzle-like approach. You'll swing around obstacles to launch across gaps, climb vertical shafts like a galactic gymnast, dangle precariously from enemies, and use timing-based grabs to defeat bosses in very creative ways. It's a way more chill, lax pace, but far more tactile. Kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon version of Bionic Commando. It almost feels purposely polar to the Blue Blur, which makes sense considering a lot of the team had been working on Sonic titles for a hot minute at this point. Throughout the game, you'll visit 6 planets, each with 2 parts and a boss, and a final single area level where you square off with the big bad himself. Planet Flora is your classic tutorial based in a lush forest jungle. Planet Undertow is an underwater level where you swim around in some straight up fish riding chaos. Y'all know I don't exactly fuck with water levels. And there is a bit to be desired here as well. Not my favorite to deal with controls. But it's quickly redeemed with Planet Scorch, a fire-themed, perfectly contrasting space for the previous level with lava, geysers, and fire traps that you've got to avoid or get your hiney cooked. Planet Sonata is for sure a standout. It's a music world with bosses that fight back using instruments. The memory puzzle here is fantastic, and the boss is extremely memorable. Planet Freon finds you skating across ice as Ristar, as well as a very silly and adorable snowball fight. And the way he falls over is just so damn cute. Planet 6, called Automaton, is mechanical mayhem and in-depth platforming. It tests all your skills that you've gathered thus far. Finally, the Space City is simple, mostly just a cool little elevator ride that leads you to the final showdown with Greedy himself. Bosses are hella inventive in this game. There are ones where you feed soup to an ice monster. Another has you peeling armor off a robot layer by layer. Ristar's boss variety rivals the creativity of games with so much more budget and time. There are various bonus stages and even a hard mode for those that are into that, but the main game is super accessible with checkpoints and a balanced difficulty curve. It's approachable, but still engaging, especially if you like experimenting with movement and different tactics. And yeah, there's a Game Gear version as well. Made by a Japan system house, it's not even entirely just a port. It has some unique levels, enemies, and even exclusive bosses to it. All in all, Ristar's gameplay is pure joy. The more laid-back approach to the movement, thoughtful combat, and puzzle design, and its ability to always keep a new mechanic just around the corner is fresh and mature for the genre. Man, I just love this game. Visually, Ristar is a late-gen Genesis showpiece. The art direction is lush and colorful. Every planet pops with personality and detail. Backgrounds layer up with clever parallax scrolling, and effects like heat waves and underwater ripples make the whole thing feel so alive. Transparency, level dimming, this thing threw everything it could at the Genesis to put that thing to work, you feel me? Ristar himself is animated to perfection. His headbutt has this very satisfying squash and stretch to it. Walk cycles are just so cute. Aww, little Ristar. But one of the coolest parts of the game is just waiting around to check out what the little guy does when he's chilling, or burning. There are different idle animations for every single level, which is just amazing. But seriously, this feels like a measured edition, as it encourages you to slow down and relax. He dances, teeters, poses, taps his foot. Ristar, more like Ristar. God, am I too old to even make that joke? Wait. Is it Ristar or Rise Star? I always said Rise because, you know, like he rises. He's a rising star. But let me know down below if you got the Riz or not. But yeah, you can tell they had big dreams of this fella catching on. The personality is absolutely there. It's a shame how they did my boy. Ristar truly feels like the Genesis swan song. A love letter to 2D before the 3D tide took over. One of the best looking games on the entire console, bar none. But you know, for as good as it looks, it sounds just as good, if not better. Composed by Tomoko Sasaki, who'd later go on to score Nights into Dreams, the soundtrack is layered, it's funky, and it's so full of character. Each world has its own vibe and uniquely makes itself known. All the music slaps, but I gotta talk about a few of my favorite tracks here. As you start level 1, the first track you hear is Shooting Ristar. I just love the little horns it opens with, playfully calling and responding with the bass line, and a classic little drum fill that leads into a shiny, soaring lead melody. Beautiful. You'll hear it a few different ways too throughout the game. This opening stage theme sets an adventurous tone with its upbeat tempo and bright melodic character. The composition employs these deep, syncopated rhythms rhythms and blends major key harmonies, creating an energetic and inviting atmosphere. We ready to rock with this one. The track Dancing Leaves might be one of the jazziest on the entire Genesis, word to Yuzo. Though it almost has like this reggae opening segment, Sasaki eventually channels Brazilian lounge vibes with a rhythm section that shuffles gently in a little 6/8 groove, letting the woodwind-inspired synth leads breathe and stretch like some famous star's arms. Harmonically, it flirts with 7th and 9th chords and gives it a subtle sophistication. Wild flex for a jungle level in a mid-90s platformer, for real, but bringing the main melody line back, this time it has a soft, almost hollow lead, giving way to a muted bell. Man, this level is gorgeous and long. I love how many bars you get in this game without a loop happening. This track gives Ristar a calm, laid-back confidence that sets it apart from the bombast of other mascot platformers. Splashdown captures the essence of an underwater adventure. This track utilizes a steady tempo and flowing melodies to create a serene ambiance. The layering of synth textures mimics the ebb and flow of water, enhancing the overall experience. I really admire how the bridge here builds into this epic, triumphant segment with an absolutely gorgeous synth line. The drums and bass on this track are sublime as well. Bouncy, groovy, I just love it. And props to you if you recognize the sample from my beat playing in the background. Next, Cruise is a beautifully melancholic track that brings back the first stage's melody motif, but it plays much more solemnly in a reflective manner. Reminiscent of like bedtime music almost, with a soothing emotional weight that leaves you in a relaxed state, with a soft bell-like lead similar to a Celesta, background pads that are detuned ever so subtly, a sparse bass, and zero percussion. This was the perfect track to utilize for my song, Rise, Star, and I hope you agree. Here's an 8-bar loop for y'all to enjoy. And if you mess with that track, go ahead and leave a Rise Star down in the comments below, and I'll consider releasing it as a single. There's even an in-game sound test disguised as a concert. So cool. So many cool touches with this game. You can hear the future DNA of Nights in the melodic layers and jazzy chord progressions. IGN later called it, quote, some of the best music on the Genesis. You know what? I gotta go ahead and give them a dub for that analysis. These tracks live rent-free in my brain over 30 years later. While Tomoko Sasaki's Ristar soundtrack often steals the show with its jazzy, melodic flair, sound effects deserve their own round of applause as well. They're crisp, expressive, and unusually well integrated with the game's music, especially for a Genesis title. You would often hear sound effects kind of cut away and stuff, but none of that here. Each grab, each headbutt, the swings, the collisions, they're all punctuated with a sound that's both distinct and tactile. The stretchy whip effect when Ristar extends his arms has a satisfying elasticity to it, a great use of pitch modulation. His signature headbutt lands with a chunky, percussive thud, and balances weight with playfulness. Bosses get layered, unique audio cues for damage and attacks, often sounding exaggerated and cartoonish. What's most impressive is how these effects never exactly clash with the music. They're well mixed, often pitched in ways that complement the background track's key or tone. On stages like Planet Sonata, musical notes and sound effects are blended and interwoven into puzzles and mechanics. This game literally uses sound as a mechanic at times, and it doesn't miss a single beat. When compared to many Genesis contemporaries, Ristar's sound design is polished to a shine. No harsh static, no clashing frequencies, just clean, personality-rich audio that knows when to punch and when to chill. It's another reason Ristar feels like a game ahead of its time, despite being one of the Genesis' final hurrahs. Now, looking back at Ristar from today's vantage, it's clear that the game has aged gracefully and earned respect beyond what it enjoyed at launch. Did this little classic that couldn't deserve better? I'm gonna go ahead and say, hell yeah, it did. And while it never got the sequel many of us hoped for, including its creator, the game found new life through compilations like the Sonic Mega Collection, the Genesis Mini, and currently the Switch Online expansion pack. Retro fans rediscovered it and started spreading the gospel. Ristar has popped up in cameos too. He's toying Shenmue, for example. A flag waver in Sonic and All-Stars Racing. You know, it ain't much, but hey, it's something. Gameplay-wise, I wouldn't say many games copied or really iterated heavily on the grab mechanic, but Ristar's influence lives on in spirit. All those indie games with strong character design and tactile mechanics, quiet debt, we'll say, to its legacy. So while Ristar never became a household name, certainly not the one Sega hoped for, it has continued to grow in popularity and notoriety throughout the years. But more than anything, Ristar reminds us that some of gaming's brightest stars burn out well before their time. 30 years later, it's still a fantastic piece of Genesis history for those who seek it out. Replaying it now, I was struck by how modern it feels, creative, expressive, polished. The many charms of the characters you play and fight, the head nod worthy tunes, the sublime game world, and the graphics, still very much worth revisiting today. I wasn't the biggest fan of the water level, and sometimes the digital 8-way grab can feel quite imprecise. But these are relatively minor beefs with a game that does so much right. Ristar finally has some of the audience it has always deserved, whether it's enjoyed on original hardware, a modern console, or just a phone. Ristar still shines as a star example of classic Sega game design done perfectly. Absolutely play it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, check out this one here, all about a certain katana-wielding ninja that changed Genesis platformers forever. Drop a like, subscribe for more retro deep dives, and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite forgotten platformer? So until next time, don't forget to get your stretch in, and I'll see y'all on the flip side. Peace!